I was born and raised here in the United States. My parents are Dominican. I was raised in Washington Heights up until the age of 16 when I moved to the Bronx. At the time, well, first of all, I should say I hated that move, but interestingly enough, today I actually own the house and still live there. I moved and came back. So it's just funny how things go full circle. Um, at the time when I moved, I was in high school. I was in Manhattan Center for Math and Science, which is, the perfect school for me as somebody who was good at math and science. Um, High school, I will say, was, I think, a little too easy for me, just because it was very much, if you do this, then you will succeed, right? If you do what we tell you to do, then you will get the good grades. And then that was it. That was sort of just that notion was just hammered in my head. But of course, that doesn't necessarily translate well to college. And being on the other side of that now, as somebody who does institutional research, one of the things that we've learned, research actually supports this idea that there's not a very good predictor of success in college prior to you actually attending college. So like high school really doesn't tell us anything about whether or not you're going to be able to succeed in college, which is information I think would have been very useful for me at the time. But right after high school, I ended up going to SUNY Maritime. And just to jump ahead a little bit, I actually ended up in 3 different colleges, just to show that, this process is not linear. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And so that's what I majored in. I was good at math and science, so why not, right? The only problem is I had no idea what an engineer did or what I wanted to do as an engineer. So even though I was doing decent in the classes, I actually ended up transferring out of SUNY Maritime just because, and if I'm going to be honest here, I was kind of jealous of some of the experiences that some of my former classmates were having in their college careers. Some of them went to Albany, some of them went to, some really fun schools. And so I wanted to experience some of that. And I think that's important because, college isn't just about the academics. You meet a lot of people and you have a lot of experiences. And I just felt like I was treating college like high school, where I was going to classes in the daytime, going to like work in the afternoon and still living at home. So it wasn't much different, except that I didn't have any of my friends. So I ended up transferring to Stony Brook, still majoring in engineering. And then at this point, things took a turn for the worse. Let's just say it was difficult for me to keep up with the courses. And in retrospect, I can say that it had more to do with me lacking a sense of purpose. I couldn't contextualize what I was learning in like physics and calculus 4. I'm like literally taking like rocket science level math at this point, and having no idea what point it was. It was like when a student asks their teacher, why are we learning this? Like, what practical use does this have? So that actually started catching up with me at this point. And, not being able to contextualize what I was learning in something, real for me, made it very difficult to understand this because it was all theoretical to me. So while I was in Stony Brook, I was taking the classes. I didn't fail any classes, but I wasn't exactly doing amazing. I actually had an advisor who completely discouraged me from staying in the program, unfortunately. And at the time I was young and naive. I figured advisors are here to help you out, right? He wouldn't have told me this if it wasn't in my best interest. Of course, I know now people are people, and I don't think that my best interest was in his mind. I imagine, because I can't say this for sure, that he was actually just more interested in lifting up sort of his success rates, right? If you get rid of the students or weed out the students that may not make it, then your denominator goes down and your success rates go up. So I imagine this had something more to do with that. So I ended up changing my major to applied math, which honestly wasn't much different because I had the same exact problem. I couldn't contextualize what I was learning. And to be honest with you, I just didn't have the work ethic that it really takes to be a college student. I just still didn't understand because in my head, high school was so easy. Why was college so hard? Being a student was always so easy for me. So eventually I came to the conclusion that if I need to figure this stuff out, I should not be in Stony Brook, because Stony Brook was costing me something like $15,000 a year, which is not, exorbitant compared to some other schools, but it didn't seem worth the money for the fact that I wasn't sure how long I was going to take there. One, so I could have been there for 6 years, 6 times 15, there you go. And I figured, you know what, why don't I just go back home, figure this stuff out. And then what I ended up doing was applying to CUNY, my first CUNY school, which was City College, which I did end up graduating from, but again, not a linear process, because there was still a lot of sort of soul searching and self-awareness that I needed to get and have. So I'm now in City College. I changed my major again. This time I decided that maybe I wanted to go into secondary education. So my minor was math. And I thought about doing this because I was actually an after school program teacher for a while. So I taught in like summer camps and after school programs or what have you. And it was really fun for me. I got to connect with some students and teach them stuff, and it was really fulfilling. Of course, as I learned more about what it actually took to be a public school teacher, I really just got turned off by it, because in after school program and summer camp, it was really up to me to create the curriculum and decide what I wanted to do, with some guidance, obviously. But I really had a lot of creative freedom, where what I discovered, and I think it's still true to some extent today, is that being a teacher in DOE is very, very structured, right? Like, this is what you have to teach. This is how you have to teach it. And you get in trouble if you divert from the curriculum. So it's like, what's the point? It felt more like a lot of work just to end up being a puppet. And no disrespect to anybody who wants to be a teacher. It's just, this is how I felt about it. And, having that creative freedom was very important to me. So now I'm just kind of lost, because I don't know what else to do at this point. I mean, the only thing I've ever done was education. And it's the only thing that I could possibly contextualize. But it just so happened that around this time, I get a little personal here. I had a girlfriend who essentially broke my heart. And it's important for that, because these experiences really end up shaping you. And for better or for worse, I think it's one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it really gave me an opportunity to get to know myself. Because what I concluded was that too much of my identity was caught in this relationship. Like, I didn't know who I was outside of this relationship. And this is somebody that I had been with the beginning, or I should say end of high school, now probably 5 years, which isn't like a whole lot of time in retrospect, but at the time it felt like a whole world, a whole lifetime. And so, with this sort of new mindset, I went out and I just sort of started exploring. Interestingly enough, like, my art history classes all of a sudden started getting very interesting to me. And I don't know, I feel like there was this creative part of my mind that was just getting expanded, which I did appreciate. And, I think research showed that, this is the kind of thing that could happen if you go through, something that you perceive as a traumatic experience. And then I made a decision that I really think made all the difference in the world. And that was that I decided to join a fraternity. And I will start by saying, I don't advocate for or against fraternities one way or another. I'm not even going to mention which fraternity I'm in, because that's not what this is about. This is just about the fact that I made the decision. I felt like it was the right thing for me to do at the time. And I think that I was lucky, because I've heard a lot of people that have very bad pledge processes. I had an amazing one, because I had a great, I'm going to call him pledge master, who actually taught me a whole lot, and really reinforced the idea of, questioning everything, knowing where you come from. I mean, I got assignments about my own background, like my own history, my own culture. And aside from that, there was a very physical aspect to it. And it was kind of like, by the time I came out of this, I was a completely different person. So like beforehand, I was not health conscious at all. I fluctuated between being overweight and obese. I was never a reader, nothing, none of those things. I wasn't very curious about anything. And then afterwards, I became super health conscious. I have to incorporate some kind of working out, like if not for my physical body, for my mind now. I started reading recreationally. I was literally it just kind of felt like what I had went to was so hard that life all of a sudden seems so much easier. And to this day, I don't think that there's anything that I've done in any like range of time that was harder than that to accomplish, I should say. And it just put things into perspective for me. All of a sudden I came back, school wasn't all that hard. Another thing was, because of the thing that I was learning, I became interested in sociology. So now it's like I'm finding my path. I found something that I was interested in. I found something that I can contextualize. And I started doing the work because now I had the work ethic, and that really changed everything for me. I went from being on academic probation, almost getting kicked out of school, to, easily getting 3.0 plus every semester, beating my term GPA every semester up until the time I graduated. I started taking summer classes to catch up, and 3 years later or so, I'm done. I'm finally done. With like in 2011, and I started in 2006. So five and a half years, which is actually pretty average. At the time, it felt like I wasted a lot of time, but now I'm just like, a lot of people take over 4 years to finish 4-year colleges. So it does kind of make you feel sort of seen or not unique to know that, right? So it's not like this is uncommon. But at that point now, I'm still working part-time job. Soon after, I did get my first full-time job at a program called CUNY Attain, which is still an excellent program. It's actually where I got all my Microsoft Office certifications, which came in a very useful as I was hoping to get into research eventually. And it still exists. If any of you are interested in getting Microsoft Office certifications, you can always look up your nearest Attain lab, ATTAIN. You can go ahead and look it up. So I'm working there, and I decided, well, what am I going to do with a sociology degree? As fun as and interesting as the degree was, I didn't have anything practical that I could do. And I ended up getting this job really because I was sort of tech savvy, not formally trained in any kind of technology, but it sort of came easy. So I could figure things out. And that was something that's always been very useful for me. So I ended up deciding to apply to grad school. And the way I saw it, I had two options. I can either become a social worker, which I hated the idea of. I was dealing a lot with a lot of people's problems. And, at this point, I got to say self-awareness is key. I knew that path was going to be anxiety ridden and stressful for me. So I decided that is not the path I wanted to go. And then I discovered, well, there is a such thing as social research. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So I did some research on that. And I eventually found the applied social research program in Hunter College, which I applied to, got in. And grad school was night and day from undergrad. I mean, first of all, if any of you are considering going to grad school, it's completely different from undergrad. You don't have to take any classes that you don't want to take. It's all catered to things that you should like and enjoy theoretically, right? If you chose the right path. And for me, luckily, that was the case. I really enjoyed the classes that I took, and it wasn't hard to get a decent grade in that. Near my last term in that program, I actually got a job at Hostel. So now it's my first time actually working full-time in CUNY in the institutional research office. So it's also the beginning of my institutional research career. In part help because of the work that one of my professors saw, who was actually institutional director in a different college, and heard about this position and recommended me, as well as some connection that I had made through my time working as a college assistant in CUNY in the Heights. which is also a satellite office that's part of Hostos Community College. So I had connections within the college already, and some good folks put a good word in for me. And so while I was in institutional research, again, remember that things are not linear. Just when you think that things are going smooth, something comes in, it's just a meteor comes in, it just crashes your whole world apart. So at this point, things are going well. I finally got a job that I enjoy. I feel like my career is actually getting started. And very, very suddenly, unfortunately, my father passes away. So this was just shocking. It was completely unexpected. And I mean, I haven't even been working here a year, and this all of a sudden happens. There's something to say about grieving properly that I have definitely learned through that experience, because at the time, it came to me to basically set up all the arrangements, the funeral arrangement, the flights, and everything that it took, answering all the questions, talking to reporters, all that kind of things, which is not something that I was prepared for at all. Like, there's nothing in the world that can prepare you for that. But I learned a lot about this entire business side to death that you don't hear about, because you always get caught up in the person is grieving and everything that the people who are alive have to go through and what have you. It's more emotional aspects, but there's a lot of things that you have to do, a whole to-do list of paperwork and what have you that I had to figure out how to do, which was very difficult for me because all I really wanted to do was grieve, but I had to be there for my family because I was really the only one that could do it for one reason or another, which I won't get too much into. But I'm not saying that this is the right thing to do. I decided the way that I was going to move forward was just by distracting myself. And for better or for worse, I took advantage of the fact that I was working in CUNY now, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to get a whole new master's degree. One of the research methods that I encountered in my first program was statistics. And so I wanted to learn more about that. And I found myself full circle, interestingly enough, coming back to math. Now, at this point, I had not taken a single math course in over 5 years. And all of a sudden, I found myself accepted into Zicklin School of Business. I mean, one of the best business schools probably in the country. And I knew it was going to be a difficult program. I was required to take Calculus 2 again in the summer before my first term because it had been over 5 years since I had done it. But the truth is, I really needed to take Calculus 1 again because I honestly needed to start from scratch. But at this point in my life, I knew what it would like to be a student. I knew what I needed to do. So I actually went on Khan Academy. If you've never heard of it, khanacademy.org. They teach you all kinds of things. And I just started taking Calc courses one by one, just to make sure that I was prepared for Calc 2 when I took it. And so, I went to the class in the summer, passed the course, and then I started my statistics program. And I, keeping with my work ethic, I was taking summer classes, and what was supposed to be a 2-year time frame to finish, I actually ended up finishing in 3 semesters. So I finished early there, which felt nice because I felt like it took me forever to finish my undergrad. So I got a little bit of my time back there. And then by the end of that, similar to the first time around, my last semester, I got a new job. Again, with the help of that professor that I met for my first degree, just to show the importance of, having work, letting people see your good work ethic. My old professor, who I mentioned before, was institutional research director in a different office, actually sort of recruited me. And she helped me get a job at Guttman Community College, which was really where I feel like my career really started taking off. At Hostos, I was just kind of stagnant, and I took advantage of the fact that I had these resources and I went to school, but I really developed like the soft skills and the things that you need to move up to like a manager and eventually a director position at Guttman. To say nothing lightly about the need to develop your emotional intelligence. I mean, that I think more than anything else, that is what I have been up to since I graduated from my stats degree. Also with the idea that I do not want to go to school anymore. I think I did enough. And you know you've done enough when even your mom is begging you to stop going to school. So I thought that that was a good indicator for me that, you know, I think I'm good. Mom's happy. We can move on with life now. But yeah, Guttman, like I said, I really honed my emotional intelligence and eventually got promoted to institutional research manager. And just this past November, I was still in Guttman and I got promoted to director of data analytics. And then I'm sure there was still some career growth there, but to be honest, I wasn't looking for a job, and this one just kind of slapped me across the face, and it would have been dumb for me to not shoot my shot. So I applied. It was right up my alley. It's literally what I was already doing at my other job, except for, to be honest, better pay and more autonomy. And it was the opportunity for me to build my own team, which is still forthcoming. You know, there's always budget considerations. But you know, it has been really nice to be able to, you know, be the person who makes the decisions, which I know can be scary for some people, but it is an opportunity that I have been looking for a while now. And yeah, I've actually only been here for, I think this is my third week. I feel like I've been here forever though, just because it's just another CUNY school. But I mean, between the 3 CUNY schools I attended for my degrees, and then now I guess it's the 3rd CUNY school that I'm working for. It just, I understand sort of how the system works. So the transition hasn't been too difficult. But yeah, that takes us to today. So I don't think I have, well, there's nothing else really to say. So I think I'll pass it back and see if there's any questions for me, anything I might have missed.
All right, folks. Wow, Joseph, that's a journey, man. Thinking, and your mom is telling you that you had enough education. You definitely.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
My parents would be like, "Hey, haven't you had more than enough?"
Yeah, exactly.
But it's great in all aspects of it. I do have to admit, man, it's quite the journey that you've taken place. And with that said, folks, the floor is yours to ask any questions. If you want to talk, just raise your hand, and I'll take questions by one raising hand. If you want to put in the chat, I'll go vice versa. So please feel free to ask. We don't bite here.
We got 19 folks.
Yeah, they showed up. Yeah, it's a little worry. Oh, here's a question for Ariana. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. What advice do you have for somebody who is graduating with their master's and is job hunting for a career in research? It's a good question.
Is graduating with their master's and is job hunting. So first thing I will say is you're ahead of the game by having your master's, because I can speak at least for CUNY, but I think in a lot of places it is consistent. You automatically get like a year or two added to your total years of job experience just because you have a degree. So that's something that's a consideration. Like for example, in CUNY here, an entry-level position would be a HEO assistant, which is like the tier. Doesn't actually mean anything to anybody outside of CUNY, but you do have to have a minimum of a bachelor degree, not a graduate degree, plus 4 years of experience. But if you have a master's, it's really like you have your degrees and then you need another maybe 2 years of experience. So that's a good start. The best thing I will say is that networking is your best option, especially if maybe depending on, you know, how you strongly you feel about your interview skills and your ability to create a good resume that will actually land you an interview to begin with. That can be a very difficult process. But what I will say is, regardless of where you need help, you should find somebody to help you do those things. If you need help with your resume, find somebody who can help you do that. If you need help with your, you know, cover letters, if you need interview skills, find somebody who will help you do that, practice it. But outside of that, find people who work within that industry, because those will be the people that like give you that leg up that you need to get in. I know for me, every job that I've gotten has been through some connection, or somehow I knew somebody that worked on the inside, or just that helped me out. And I know some people feel like, you know, they want to do it on their own. I'm not suggesting that that's who you are, but I will say that I think that's nonsense. I don't think anybody ever got anywhere without somebody above them picked them up. The difficult thing for you, I think, would be figuring out how to get their attention, because the higher up you go, the busier you become, and the more your time is worth. So you have to be worth the time for somebody to say you're an exceptional person and I want to see you succeed. But I will say that once somebody makes a decision about you, they'll bend over backwards for you. I've seen that happen multiple times. The hard part is getting that in. Hopefully that helps. Aside from that, you said want to go to grad. Wait, okay, sorry, I saw another question. This is for career and research. Tangible skills, I will say. Research in general is becoming more and more technical. So really you have to have some, I guess, IT skills, SQL, Python, R. You might, I actually hope not, you're not still doing SPSS and SAS in college, but I imagine that that is what's happening. But I will say I try to stay away from those programs just because a lot of people, especially in the private industry, are just not using that. I feel like those are seen a lot more in higher education. So definitely some tangible skills. And if nothing else, don't go for proficient in Microsoft Office. That's just not enough. Everybody's proficient in Microsoft Office. You're supposed to know Microsoft Office today. If you get a certification, get a certification. If not, get something more advanced that shows that you've done that. And maybe even building a portfolio. If you have anything that you're proud of that you did in school, those things will help. Even if they don't ask for it, include them in your application packet, just because that way they'll get a chance to see what kind of work you can do.
It's a great response, Joseph, because I always tell that to a lot of students, man. Connections, networking. Personally, I've seen it, and I'm glad you definitely brought that out. Here's another good question. What is the best advice you can give undergraduates who want to go to graduate school?
Well, first I say, yeah, we're now backtracking a little bit. First, I'd say make sure your GPA is good. I mean, above 3.0. Keep in mind that your GPA, in order to graduate from graduate school, you need to have a minimum of 3.0 GPA. For bachelor's, you only need a 2.0, is my understanding. So if you're not already if you don't already have a 3.0 GPA, people are not probably going to believe that you can sustain a 3.0 GPA moving forward. So, I mean, really what it comes down to, and this advice that was given to me, is your job is to convince the person who's going to accept you, or who's making that decision, that you can succeed in this program, because it's more competitive as you keep going, and they want to see good success rates, where they don't want to get people who they don't think are going to succeed, or are sort of wishy-washy about it. And speaking of that last sort of wishy-washy thing, know what it is that you want to do. I mean, I think that in graduate school, people want to see a little bit of passion when you write your, whatever letter or essay assignment they might have you do. They want to see that you really appreciate the field, that you are hungry for knowledge in that regard, that you have a sense of what it is that you want to do with that degree, those kinds of things. Because otherwise, how do you stand out, right? And even with job interviews, at the end of the day, you have to convince that person. You have to show them that they're getting something out of you, right? They're not doing you a favor. They don't have to do you a favor. They don't know you. So it's your job to write up something compelling.
That's a good response. I preach that coming. I used to work in the mission side, and I always tell students, minimum cutoff for graduate school is 3.0. Mm-hmm. Some schools and some programs might put you in as a non-degree student, which will cost you more if you're at a 2.8, 2.9, and that's very few programs that do that.
Yeah.
Do that, you really have to show forth and convince them that where you want to be and what you want to do and what your passion is, and you hit that right on the nail.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
These are good questions. Keep it coming, folks, man. You have any other questions, concerns? You could also raise your hand, and you can definitely speak out too as well if you want. Oh, here's a good one. Hello, I've done 2 internships involving with data analyst position. This is pretty winded. One with a city position and the other one federal position. Still feel like I'm lacking some certain skills. What is the most important skill that employers looking for when hiring a data analyst? It's a good one.
If I had to pick one thing, SQL. You really make sure that you're good at SQL, however you want to say it. If you're just using Excel, that's not going to be enough. But if you can also learn Python, that would be a great. If you can learn some business intelligence tools, Power BI, Tableau, things like that, that would be great. If you can create your own dashboards, even from Python or R, from scratch, that you're an actual coder, that's good as well. But I think in general, people want to hire somebody who can figure things out. That's not, asking permission or asking questions about every little thing, but just saying, when you come to me, you're saying, hey, look at all this work that I already did, all this research. I answered your potential questions before you even got a chance to ask them. Those kind of things, you make somebody else's life easier, and that's very attractive, I think, for somebody. And aside from that, I will say, if you do have all those skills, your soft skills are definitely going to make a huge difference. Because one thing I will say about data analysts is that no disrespect to anybody, but they can be a little dry. And then a lot of this is working with folks, right? And you got to remember, depending especially what data, I'm a social researcher. So the data that we crunch is about people. You have to have some compassion about the unit of analysis when it's people. And this also affects people's lives. So when you're talking to somebody who knows nothing about data, and they have a passion for what it is that they do, they're not going to look at you very fondly if you're sort of very dry and looking things too analytically. All right. So that's just life experiences and soft skills that you can develop that I think will kind of give you a little bit of an edge if all those technical things are already aligning.
Awesome. I see Sarah here. GPA wise, I see your GPA wise. I'm only going to speak on because I used to work in admissions. GPA, that's a checklist. You got that good.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I would say that does make you competitive. But if you're applying for graduate school, you have to be able to show, what do you want to do? What is your goal? What is your passion? And I think Joseph really hit that, and also I'm going to highly advise this is coming only personally wise. If you know what you want to do specifically in graduate school, visit the schools, find out when they have information sessions. There you get to meet faculty, you get to meet staff there that you're going to be working in tandem with, and you can get to pick their brain out. What are the requirements or what are they looking for? You got to do a little bit of your research. But I'm just saying that because I used to work in admissions. So any folks that are applying for graduate school, bang, if you have the 3.0, bang, you got that checklist. It's not only GPA wise. You got to show, like Joseph mentioned, that you really know what you want to do, what your goals are, what is the dream that you want to fulfill. That's definitely important. If you want to add into that, Joseph, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, just to piggyback, people remember your face. They remember the people that showed up. That's for sure. A lot of people apply and there's very little opportunity to put a face to the name, and to show up makes a huge difference because they're just not expecting that a lot of the times. And people are more than willing to share information. Like if you're trying to figure out what to put in your essay, you might be able to get an answer about that from somebody. I wouldn't ask, what do I put in my essay, but you can ask, what are you looking for in a student, or something like that. If you frame the question correctly, next thing you know, they're basically creating the outline for, whatever essay you might have to write to get in. So definitely recommend meeting people and just socializing with anybody that you can in the program. But I think most important is just having a passion for it.
Exactly. What I would take is, once you've honed down on what you really want to do, you look at the schools that you want. You look at when the requirements are, when is their deadlines, and tackle each one. Okay, when do they have information sessions? And I always tell folks, if you really want something, you're going to go out and get it. So not to say that no one here doesn't want any of that, but that's how the approach I would take, especially for graduate school too as well. And Joseph, you hit it on the nail, getting to see that face trust me, as working in admissions and I get applications, I remember faces really, really well.
Yeah,
And
right.
the impression you make goes a long way.
And then your application, your name pops up in,
Yep.
in a million applications. Like, oh, I remember this person. It actually does happen. And I remember people telling me that before, and I didn't really believe it. But I mean, being on the other side, I can tell you that it's 100% true. It's 100% true.
Absolutely right. These are good questions, folks. Keep it coming.
I will say, since I have a chance to speak here, I think I mentioned, or I might have glossed past it. We are hiring. We will be hiring, I should say, not yet. We will be hiring. So if anybody is interested in career and institutional research, there could be an opportunity for you. I will say that, there's a certain criteria that you have to meet that I really can't do anything about, even if I am the hiring manager, because HR tackles everything first. So you really, if you can't get past them, then I'll never even see your resume. But if you want to shoot your shot, I'm happy to pass along the job posts when they open up. You can also look into if you don't meet the minimum requirements for something like full-time, you might be able to get started at least as a college assistant. That's not uncommon either. We may be hiring one of those as well. And it's not a glamorous job, but it gets you in the door. It gives you an opportunity to learn directly from people who are in the industry. And again, you're now not just a name, you're a face. So if and when the opportunity comes for you to interview for a full-time position, people are going to remember you. They're going to remember your work ethic, and you'll be a shoo-in. I've seen it happen a million times. Actually, I lived that life. I was a college assistant at Hostels before I got into institutional research, and through those connections, that was one of the ways that I was able to get my first full-time job here in institutional research.
Awesome. And folks, if you're looking for jobs in CUNY, like you mentioned, Joseph mentioned, if you go to, I put in the chat, www.cuny.edu, I'll get you to the CUNY page. On the left-hand side, just put your mouse over where it says about, and you have employment, and you can see all the job postings within the City University of New York from all across campuses. Positions, titles, what they're looking for. So when that comes up, Joseph, that's where you go, folks, to apply.
Absolutely. And that's why, I mean, if you contact me, that's where I'm going to send you. There's really nothing I can do about it. You have to go through that process. There's no getting around, at least not with CUNY.
Any other questions, folks? Questions, concerns?
Doubts?
Oh, Rosemary. Rosemary, welcome.
Hi. Hi, everybody. Let me see if I can turn on my camera here. Hi.
Hey, Rosie.
Hi, Joseph. Hi, Edwin.
Hey.
Hello, students. I'm Rosie Chan. I work with Prism on the 5th floor of the new building with the science department. And I wanted to ask Joseph, right? You have a lot of experience in a lot of great leadership roles and supervising roles. How do you go about negotiating in terms of your salary, benefits, and do you have any tips and suggestions or advice?
Oh, that's a good one. I will start by saying you have to build leverage. You can't just go in there and just say, "Oh, I'm the best." You should, like you have to prove what your worth is, and it can't just be your word of mouth. So there is work that needs to be done, even if you do feel like you deserve a certain amount, because at the end of the day, if you don't seem indispensable to the company that you're trying to negotiate your salary with, then they're not going to have any reason to give you a salary increase. And that's the basic point of it. You can't suggest that, other people over in this area are getting paid more and what have you, because all they're going to say is, "Okay, we'll go over there then if you want." So you really have to have some kind of leverage in order to do that. So once you've gotten there though, that having that conversation can be very awkward, because, you know, I think a lot of us were brought up with this, depending on where you end up working, that you're supposed to do things sort of for the love of it, right? I think that you hear that a lot in like nonprofits and public industry and what have you. And I'm like, yeah, I can love something, but love doesn't pay the rent, you know. Love doesn't take care, doesn't buy diapers, it doesn't take care of my kids, you know, all of that stuff. So to me, I will say, since it's just us, I think that's nonsense. And I think you should 100% advocate for yourself, but you should do so respectfully. Come with, these are the accomplishments, right? This is what I've been able to do. This is how I feel my my responsibilities have evolved since I first started working here. And then maybe you can argue even for a title change or something like that. But you have to make a compelling argument that you are worth this amount. And then hear what it is I have to say. And at the end of the day, none of it's guaranteed. I can say within CUNY, there's always budget considerations. But the fact is that your best leverage is that losing you is going to cost the company a lot more money than it would be giving you that money. And that's really what it comes down to. If you can come up with a way of showing that, then you're golden. I can't imagine that they would say no to you, because it literally would be a loss for them in so many ways. But aside from that, if you feel strongly that the place that you're at is not giving you what you deserve, then leave. At the end of the day, companies a lot of time, they're out for their own benefit. Profit is the bottom line, or, you know, some other metrics of success will be the bottom line for them. And you might just be seen as a cog in the machine. And if you want to be more than that, then you need to be prepared to leave. That is actually a huge amount of leverage for you right there, because essentially they called your bluff. And, you know, you don't want to bluff. You need to actually be prepared to leave if you really feel that strongly about it. So yeah, don't be afraid to do that. There's plenty of ways. If you know, really love what you do and you want to give back, that does not necessarily mean that you need to sacrifice your own well-being or your own salary, your own potential, your own value, just because, you know, you feel strongly about the industry that you're in. There's multiple places doing similar things that you can find, where you can still, you know, keep those values and, you know, feel fulfilled and worthy.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph.
Mhm.
I should have clarified my question at the beginning. When you're, you know, you got your degree, you're looking for your first post-baccalaureate job,
Mhm.
right? And there's a salary range.
Mhm.
And most people be like, oh, thank God I got a job after I
Yeah.
graduated, right? At least it'll tie me over. Is there any suggestions you would have for that? Like, do you approach negotiating? What are some benefits that our students should be asking about and inquiring about, right? Like, for example, like health, dental, we know about those,
Mhm.
professional development.
But yeah, I think those are pretty standard. I mean, I think we're kind of spoiled in CUNY with the benefits, right? Because we have health, dental, we definitely have professional development. There's retirement plans, which is a must. And then there's, of course, things that you can pass on to your dependents and your loved one, your spouses, which is also very important. So, I mean, those are definitely the kind of thing that you want to be looking out for. If there is a salary range, I don't think it ever hurts to just ask, you know, can we go here? If it's within the salary. And I think it's also very important to ask, if they say no, ask why not, you know, or like what exactly is missing, that for whatever reason they decided that you weren't worth the maximum around the range, or that you couldn't get as much as you thought that you were hoping to get. It could be their own budget constraints, which is not much you can do about it. But, you know, you might actually get an answer and saying, hey, look, if you had this, this, and that, then we could have offered you that. And then that gives you a path for growth, right? Because now you know, okay, this is where I need to work on. So even if you don't get the salary that you want, at least you know how to maybe fill in those spots, so that the next time you ask, you get closer to where you wanted to be. Aside from that, I say also remember to be patient. I kept saying, like, it's not a linear path. It's never going to go exactly the way that you expected, and your status quo is going to continuously change as your salary increases. So, just be patient, try to enjoy the journey, because otherwise you're going to be miserable, constantly thinking like, oh, this place doesn't value me and what have you. There are certain aspects of life that you just need to, things that are within your control that you need to focus on, and then not worry so much about the things that you can't.
That's good. No, that's really good. I'll just put in my own experiences working in CUNY. And I think there was something that, I could see was the cap on something. I think it was the salary, cap on the salary. And so I asked for flexibility in my working hours. I have a long commute. I have people I take care of. And I said, can we work with this?
Yeah.
And so that was something that I was given. There's grace, right? And I always appreciate the employer's grace. I said, thank you very much. This, it definitely improved my work productivity.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, working from home, for example, is huge, right? I mean, think about how much money you spend on just commuting to and from work. So, I mean, yeah, you can, if you can't get the salary that you wanted, you can maybe ask for other things that will sort of make up the difference. That's, I mean, the working from home is like probably the best example that I can think of, because you spend so much money on it. Well, some companies might be willing, or it may be more cost effective for them to give you another perk. Maybe they'll get you a new laptop, they'll get you like a good chair, some ergonomic setup, and things like that to make up for the fact that they can't get you the salary that you want. But I don't think it's wrong to expect them to show a little something, right? Now, because then at least they'll show like, listen, we're really trying here, but we can't give you what you want, but we can give you this, And I think that's something, right? It shows that they value you at least somewhat. Otherwise, they just say like, look, take it or leave it.
Right about that. Any folks have any questions?
7th inning stretch.
Last few minutes left, folks, so this is the time. Welcome, Christopher. So this was great. Thank you.
That's good feedback right there. Part of the job.
Well, I guess if anyone folks don't have any more questions, going to wrap this up. First off, I want to thank Joseph for taking the time, bringing in his professionalism and insight and life in general, the whole big perspective. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you as well, students and alumni and students from all walks of CUNY showing up. Definitely appreciate you taking the time to do so. But there'll be many more of these series coming up. So make sure for any John Jay folks, check your John Jay email. And also my community college folks, make sure you stay in touch with those folks, because these are great events and great times to spend. But with that all said, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And again, Joseph, shout out to you and thank you so much. With that said, folks, have a wonderful day.
All right, take care, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.